My name is Keira Knightley. I'm Director of Programming for the festival, and welcome to this evening's Canadian premiere screening of Colette. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that tonight's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are very grateful to have the opportunity to work in this community. We are very pleased to present this film at the Visa Screening Room at the Princess of Wales Theatre. We thank Visa Canada for making this possible. They're wonderful partners of TIFF. Yes, round of applause. This film is eligible for the Girls People's Choice Award, and you can vote for all of your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. A huge thank you to many partners on this film: Elevation Pictures, Bleecker Street, 30 West, and Hanway Films for providing us with the film today, and thank you also to the British Council for their generous support. Director Wash Westmoreland has been at the festival many times before, including with his last feature, Still Alice, which some of you might be familiar with. I first became familiar with Collette as a writer and French icon when studying in university, and I'd always wanted to see her celebrated on the big screen in a way that would make her accessible to a broader public. Wash Westmoreland, in partnership with his co-writers, including the beloved late Richard Glatzer and Rebecca Lenkiewicz, and his amazing actors, including Keira Knightley and Dominic West, has done just that. His Collette and Keira's superb portrayal of her is everything I believe that Collette would have wanted it to be. Full of life, fearless, beautiful, and unapologetically feminist. We're fortunate to have the director and cast here for an intro and a Q&A this evening, so please stick around. But now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming the director of Collette, Wash Westmoreland.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. This is the fourth time I have brought a film to Toronto, and I have a very special personal connection with this festival. Last time I was here was in 2014 with a small independent movie without a distributor, Still Alice. Going into the week, no one was talking about the film. It wasn't on any list of hot films to see or acquire. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon screening at the Winter Palace, the audience response was so resounding that the film was catapulted into a miraculous release with Sony Picture Classics in just 3 months, in time for the awards season. So I owe Toronto International Film Festival everything. It's a great pleasure to be here to present my new film, Collette, and it's been a long journey. The first draft was written by my co-writer and co-director and life partner, Richard Glatzer, in 2001. So it took 17 years, over 30 drafts, a couple of false starts to get it made. We did 3 other films in the time that we were waiting for Collette, but it was always our dream project. So if there's anyone out there who's working on something and it's taking longer and you're banging your head against the wall, I just want to say, never say die. In 2011, Richard developed a lisp in his speech that on further investigation turned out to be ALS. Rather than retreating into self-pity and depression, he was just hell-bent on making movies, the last one of which was Still Alice. He wasn't able to attend the screening at TIFF, but watched the whole thing and the audience response through a FaceTime on a PA's iPhone. And 6 months later, we watched the 2015 Oscars from the ICU at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. It did not stop us and our friends from smuggling in champagne and celebrating. And when Julianne won, we let up a cheer so loud these medical orderlies came running down the corridor thinking there was like a medical emergency. So afterwards, I asked Richard what he wanted to do next. He was almost completely paralyzed by then, and he typed with his big toe on a special machine, Collette. A few days later, he passed, so I knew what I had to do. Some scripts, when you've had them for a few years, can get a bit dusty, and you feel they are no longer in touch with the times. But with Collette, it was the exact opposite. Her characteristically fearless approach to gender and sexuality has made the story more current with every passing year. And with the recent Time's Up movement, it has found extraordinary historical parallels. Along the way, many amazing people came to work on this project with me. My co-writer, who worked with me after Richard passed, Rebecca Lenkowitz, who can't be here tonight, but some people who can. And I'd like to bring them on the stage. My legendary producers, Christine Vachon, Pam Koffler, Liz Carlson, Stephen Woolley, and Gary Michael Walters. We'd also like to acknowledge our amazing distributor, Bleecker Street and 30 West, and Andrew Carpin for really believing in this film and getting behind it. I also have some actors here that I'd like to introduce you to. Denise Goff, who plays Missy. Jake Graff, who plays Gaston de Caive. Ray Panthaki, who plays Pierre Weber. The irrepressible Mr. Dominic West, who plays Willie. And the brave and brilliant and incandescent Miss Keira Knightley. So we're going to have a Q&A afterwards, so please stick around. And I would just like to dedicate this screening to Richard and his family who traveled here specially for this. I felt him around me when I was making the film, and I feel him here in the room tonight. I know he wouldn't miss another chance to come to Toronto. Enjoy the show. Thank you. I've very rarely enjoyed watching one of my films so much with an audience. Thank you. And I'd like to bring our amazing cast back on stage. I have Denise Goff. And Ray Panthaki. And Jake Graff. And Willie, Mr. Dominic West. And the real Claudine, Keira Knightley.
I'd like to start this off by asking you, Wash, you mentioned in your introduction how long it took to make this film, and if you can talk a little bit about why this cast for these roles after, you know, all the time that you spent working on it.
Yeah, it was many, many years, and we'd never let Collette go to sleep. We'd always keep, you know, revising the script and keep thinking, we have to find a way to make this film. And it was after Richard passed that Pam Koffler, Liz Carlson, Christine, and Stephen sort of came together and said, let's make this film happen. And the BFI came on board, Bold Film came on board, and then it's a question, who is going to play Collette? And the natural choice was Keira Knightley. And I actually was at Shanghai Film Festival. I got a message, Keira Knightley wants to talk to you. I was like so excited. I got a FaceTime call. I had like 15% of my battery. So we talked really fast and really energetically. I had 2% left on my battery, and I was like, no one in the world can do this like you. You have to do it. And she said, let's do it. And the phone died. I was staring at this dead phone in my hand thinking, my God, Keira Knightley is going to be Collette. That was a good night. And then the rest of the cast came together wonderfully. I just, could not have been more honored to work with such wonderful actors in this production.
And can I ask you about the choice of which part of her life you focused on? It's more of the, obviously, origin story of her as a writer and her relationship with Willie, and why that period?
Yeah, if you look at Colette's life, it's truly incredible. There's enough in there for like 4 or 5 seasons on HBO. No problem. But for this movie, it just seemed the first marriage was about the birth of her as an artist. And just felt that a lot of things that were happening around the changes in gender roles at the turn of the century were refracted through this marriage, and that was the natural arc from the courtship to the split was the story that we wanted to tell.
Keira and Dominic, I'd love to ask you both, you have such electric chemistry on screen, whether you're, making love or fighting about who else you're making love with. And I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about, what that was like to work together and how you prepared for the kind of roller coaster of emotions of your relationship.
We learnt to polka. The first time that I met him, it was in a dance rehearsal, and they said, right, you're going to learn to polka now, and we failed so miserably that it didn't make the film, but it did break the ice, so that was good.
The polka was actually beautiful. The beginning was just a little long, so that's the hard decision. It's going to be a great DVD extra.
Yeah.
But Keira dancing on her own was on for ages, I noticed, but with me... So what was wrong with the polka?
We can throw it out to you. Oh, do you want to add more to
how many we only get one kiss in the whole thing. And we only get 1 or 2. And I remember it with that moustache and a fat suit. my maxi fat. I had 3. I was wearing the maxi. And that horrible moustache. And
it was
then
like kissing a walrus.
How do you know?
First time Keira and Dominic read together in the rehearsal room, I'm like, this is never going to work. They have no chemistry. No, the pleasure of it is that Willie is a villain, but Dominic really got the fun of it, that, a lot of men who behave badly are very charming and seductive, and Dominic can sell that like no one else.
Why?
Okay, we'll throw it out to you guys for some questions. Okay, lots of hands. We're going to go into the second row here in the black. Yep.
Thank you for the film. My question for Keira, when did you first hear about Collette, and what was your reaction to hearing about her and her stories? If you read them, what was your reaction to them?
The question is for Keira. When did you first learn about Collette as a writer, and did you read her stories, and what was your reaction to them if you did?
I think, like many people, my first knowledge of her was through the musical Gigi. And then, my mum is a writer, and I knew that she'd always been obsessed with Collette, and particularly the Claudine novels. But actually, I'd only read, before this, I'd read Cherie and The Last of Cherie, and loved those. But I didn't know anything about her life at all. So this was when the script came through the door, I thought, wow, cool.
Okay, on the aisle towards the side, yep. Yep. No, so just behind you, back here. Well, we can come back to you, it's fine. Go first, yep.
You all played such historically significant roles, and I was wondering if any of you were struck with any particular similarities between yourselves and the characters that you played.
That's a great question for all of the cast. You all played, roles based on real people, and wondering if there was anything that you found that was similar between yourselves and the roles you played.
Was everyone watching me? Oh God, the pressure. A great sense of style. I think, obviously, I don't present myself as a man, but I related to the desire to be exactly who I am. Yeah, that was the thing that really drew me to Missy.
I mean, I actually felt very lucky because I'm a trans guy, and I was really privileged to help Denise with a little bit of consulting on what it is to be trans and how it feels to be trans. And a lot of Missy's lines and experiences really reminded me of growing up and wearing boys' clothes at a very young age and just knowing that that felt right. And I have to say, this is the first time I've seen the film, and I was absolutely blown away. I have to say, it was absolutely stunning. But your portrayal of Missy, or Uncle Max, was absolutely spot on. It was really, really moving. So really well done.
I think for me, the main difference is Pierre Weber was historically a white guy, a well-known playwright and novelist, and I have to thank Wash for colorblind casting here. It's, you know, I never get the opportunity.
I just pick the best actors. That's it.
Absolutely, and that's the way everything should be, I feel. But yeah, I'm very grateful to that. I'd never get the opportunity to dress up in those clothes. So thank you very much, Wash.
Oh, no, I don't see any similarity at all. It was all an adventure for me, a voyage of discovery. How about you?
Yeah, I think I want to be more like her, you know, and I think that's what I loved about it so much. I felt inspired by her. I felt like empowered by her, you know. She was a woman that stood very tall, and I felt very tall playing her. So I would like to be more like her in my life.
Okay, we're going to come down to the corner. You're in pink in the front row.
My question's for Keira. There's a big transition from her innocence at the beginning to the empowerment she has at the end. How did you create that transition and map that transition for yourself and building that empowerment for her?
So the question is for Keira about how the character evolved from being at the beginning very, you know, naive and innocent to feeling very empowered, and wondering how you kind of navigated that arc.
Yes, I don't know. I think, you know, me and Wash talked a lot about it, really, and we talked about her sort of physicality as being incredibly important. So it was sort of starting as this sort of slightly gangly kind of teenager, and how you physically kind of grow into your own skin. So literally, when I say, you know, I felt tall, it was partly because it was suddenly, you know, you want to feel like your shoulders are back and you're taking the world on. But I think, you know, again, it was discussions with Wash, and often I would do things and he'd go, a lot less, and I go, oh, okay, okay. So yeah, do that, but really subtle. And you go, oh, okay.
Yes.
The transition from 19 years old to 34 years old is so incredible that I see Collette mature on screen in that way, and the whole energy, her energy just shifts, and it's just incremental in the performance, and so you don't notice it happening until you think where she is at the end and where she started at the beginning. It's this incredible transformation.
Sorry, we're going to go into the middle here. There's two of you. I'm going to go to the one okay. The man in the middle. Sorry, yep. Yep.
My question is to Olivier-winning actress Scott.
I like that. Twice. We might as well roll with it.
So what kind of preparation did you specifically do for portraying Missy in this film?
Well, thankfully, Wash and the whole team were incredibly well informed, and I was lucky enough to work a lot with Jake, and I did as much as I was possibly available to me in order to ensure that I felt okay with playing the role, you know, as a cis woman. And so I approached it like I approach everything else, and I do rigorous research for everything. But it was not, I didn't do it alone, I did it with a lot of help, and but particularly Jake, who has that experience. Yeah.
Wash, I just wanted to ask you about some of the visual style of the film. The production design and the costumes, everything is exquisite, but almost in a way kind of disappears behind this amazing story and these characters. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the choices you made.
Yeah, we really wanted to capture the feel of the Belle Epoque, but we didn't want it to be a sort of shiny presented costume drama. The stains on the clothes, there's toothpaste stains on the clothes. And we wanted just kind of lived in details. I worked with a great production designer, Michael Carlin, and a great cinematographer, Giles Nutjens. And we looked a lot at the films of Max O'Fools, who was born in the Belle Epoque and made a lot of films like Earrings of Madame de and Letter from an Unknown Woman that really influenced this kind of waltzing style the film has, and the sense that the camera always follows Collette. Even when Willie is dominating the conversation and sucking up all the oxygen, it's like always Colette's point of view that you see through the way the camera moves. And also it was a very rich time for painting. So we reference the painters Gustave Caillebotte and Jean Barrault, who just painted the Paris of that time so beautifully. So a lot of the palette, that subdued palette, came from those painters.
Okay, we're going to go into the center. Yes, stand up. Yep.
Thank you. My question is more about your choice as a director. The real Collette did not have children because Willie gave her syphilis. So why did you choose not to put that in the story?
She did have a child. What? She did have a child. Yeah. After this, she did have it with another man. She had a child.
The question is for Wash about why you chose not to include the fact that she was given a venereal disease by Willie.
Yeah. It's not completely certain. Collette had an illness into her marriage, and if it was syphilis, it would have been incurable at that time. So some biographers have posited that it wasn't. It was just a kind of, sort of nervous and spiritual exhaustion of being a new bride in Paris in what she often referred to as a, very difficult time when she realized Willie was cheating on her. So to, focus on this when it wasn't definite and it kind of didn't feel like the best way to start the story was artistic license. As Willie says, make your story better than theirs and everyone will believe you. So I just took that advice. What Collette did was take the raw stuff of her own life and make it into a great narrative. That's what we tried to do with this film.
Yes, in the corner in the green, you've had your hand up a while. Thanks.
Hi, so thank you for making this movie. I feel very powerful after watching it as a woman and as a minority in the LGBT plus group. So thank you. And also I have a question for Keira. I'm just wondering how did you get into the character and what helped you get into the character during the filmmaking process? Any writing material or any experience you had in the past?
So that was just a comment that she feels very empowered after watching the film as somebody from an underrepresented group. And I guess maybe Keira, if you can expand on kind of what you did to prepare for the role in terms of what you'd read, any of that.
One of the things I love about doing films like this is the research, and I try and do as much of it as I can possibly do in the time that I've got. So I think we all read the Judith Thurman biography, Secrets of the Flesh, and then I just tried to read as many of her novels to get her voice as possible. So I read all of the Claudines and The Vagabond, loved The Vagabond. And then, as I said, I'd already read Cherie and Last of Cherie, so I read those again because I liked them so much. And then that was all I had time for. But you just get a real sense of her through her work. That's what she was brilliant at. That's the way that what she wanted to project into the world. So really, I used her work to try and sort of get under her skin.
Just another question for Wash. I'm curious did you shoot this sequentially? The arc of their relationships are so believable and so important to the storytelling. I'm wondering, how you chose to do that.
I would have loved to have shot it sequentially, but it was impossible. We were shooting in 3 different countries. We shot the exteriors in the English countryside, and we got sunshine, which was really, really a blessing. And then we shot for 5 weeks in Budapest, and we shot a lot of the interiors in Budapest, because Budapest kind of stylistically emulated Paris around the turn of the century, and they have their own Moulin Rouge, which was boarded up all through the communist era and now has been reopened. And we're like, wow, this actually is very close to the original Moulin Rouge. And the one in Paris has moved away from that look and looks more like a kind of big Las Vegas nightclub these days. So that was very fortunate. And then we had one day in Paris to shoot Collette walking along the banks of the Seine, and Keira walking along the banks of the Seine in Colette's footsteps. So that was a wonderful way to end it. But with a schedule like that, you can never really get a sequential thing going. The one time that was not true was in the apartment where we were for, I think, 8 or 9 days. We shot all that, and that's like the backbone of their relationship. We shot all those scenes in order in the apartment to really let the relationship build, and to that final powerful scene at the end, which is on the last day in Budapest, and really blew the roof off when we were shooting.
Okay, we have time for a couple of more questions from you guys. Is there anybody in the balcony? Yes, stand up if you don't mind. Okay.
My question is for Wash. You co-directed a lot of movies in the past. How does it feel being the sole director on this movie?
The question is for Wash. You and Richard collaborated on many movies in the past, and if you don't mind opening up a little bit about what it was like to work on this solo.
Well, thank you for the question. And, it was very difficult because Richard and I had worked together for 20 years and really shared our days, shared our nights, shared our work, shared our thoughts. And but before he passed, he said that he wanted me to keep making movies. And I guess that was a way when I was coming out of the deepest phase of my grief, that was a way I could feel close to him, by doing his work, making this dream project that we'd thought about for so many years, and seeing his brilliant writing coming out of the mouth of such incredible actors. So it was tough being on my own, but if I hit a problem on the set, I kind of thought, what would Richard do? And that half of my brain would respond. So in many ways, I still felt like I was co-directing, like it was so much about his aesthetic, his ideas, and his sense of cinema.
Actually, I think that's a beautiful note to end this on. That's all we have time for. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, guys.